Good morning. I'm Alex. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of the Data City, and joining me today is Tom Forth, co-founder and CTO. Today's webinar's a introduction to a new product that we launched in October, which we call R6 or Real 6. And this is a web text-based assignment of SIC codes to companies, which is an extension of our sort of core product offering to our customers. So the Data City set out to build a new industrial classification system, recognizing the limitation of SIC codes in the UK and other territories and NAICS and whatnot around the world. And initially, we were focused on creating classifications for sectors that don't have a classification that represents them. So the frontier economy, sectors like quantum, AI, fintech, etc. While we've been doing that, we have been repeatedly asked if we could look at solving the assignment of the existing SIC codes. Obviously, a lot of the economy still operates in traditional sectors. And those requests came from two main customer groups. The first was the public sector. And at the end, we'll show you a little bit about this. But consistently, the SIC code 82990, other business support services not elsewhere classified, comes in the sort of certainly in the top 5, but often in the top 3 sectors for any place or any view of the UK. And it's clearly not very helpful in terms of its description of the businesses within it. But also from the private sector, we have been approached by large financial services, so tier 1 banks and insurers, because when they receive an application from a business and they look at its SIC code at Companies House, they aren't able to use it. They have regulatory obligations for anti-money laundering and know your customer, where they cannot trust the SIC code that's provided to them, and they have large teams of people manually checking the websites of applicants for bank accounts and insurance policies, who are then assigning the SIC codes they think most appropriate. So this is extremely costly. It's often inaccurate because you're relying on human interpretation. But also it slows down the application process, delivers a poor customer experience. So we decided to have a look at fixing this properly, and Tom took on the challenge. We ran a really focused development sprint, part of the benefit of being an agile startup, and we've delivered what we think is a fantastic solution to this particular problem in economic data or business data. You know, our value proposition is that we tell you what companies do. We've now wrapped our arms around not just sectors that don't have classifications, but our ability to correctly assign SIC codes. And I think at that point, I will hand over to Tom.
Thanks, Alex. Hello, everyone. As Alex said, I'm the co-founder and the CTO at the Data City, and I'm going to talk for 10 to 15 minutes about R6, real SIC codes. And I'm titling that SIC codes fixed. But first, we are going to have to talk about R6 as well, because these are SIC codes updated. So real SICs are SIC codes fixed, R6 are SIC codes updated. They work together, and you'll see how that happens over this talk. The first place I want to start is with Veolia. You probably get your bins if you're in the UK, possibly also if you're in Europe. I don't know if they extend to the USA. But in the UK, certainly, Veolia probably collects your bins, run your recycling centre, run your incineration services, and deal with landfill sites. They're a Spanish company, but they have a large UK operation. And their SIC codes are 70100, activities of head office, and 96090, other service activities not elsewhere classified. And that doesn't tell you anything about what I've just told you they do. So I want to quickly show you what their RTICs are. These are AI-created classifications that tell you in areas of the emerging economy what the company does. Veolia are a land remediation service. That's correct. They run landfill sites, which they then repurpose for future purposes once they're full. They are a net zero company. Specifically, they are diversion of biodegradable waste from landfill. Absolutely, they do that. And they run renewable energy planning databases. They definitely do that. They do waste management and recycling, and they also do bioenergy, energy generation. That's because they run incinerators. These are areas that aren't classified by SIC codes. But what we heard over and over again was all of our systems are set up to work with SIC codes. These RSICs are amazing. That's really cool. But we want to know what the real SIC codes are of Veolia. And that's the answer. So we're able to use our systems based on the web text of Veolia and their web presence to say, these are the 4 SIC codes that we know they really have. That's collection of non-hazardous waste. We know that's right. Treatment and disposal of non-hazardous waste, remediation activities and other waste management services, and recovery of sorted materials. All those 4 things are exactly what Veolia does. They have the SIC codes there. The RSIC codes are exactly the same as SIC codes. They're a drop-in replacement for any service that you already have that runs with SIC codes. I'm just going to remind people what the SIC system is with one example. The example is 20170. That's a manufacturer of synthetic rubber in primary forms. There are 48 companies in the UK that have that SIC code. It's worth saying that the SIC code system is absolutely fantastic for these companies. If you want to understand who are the manufacturers of synthetic rubber in primary forms in the UK, the SIC code system is amazing. There's only 48 of those companies, so you're not going to get a good understanding of what the economy is like, but the SIC code system works for them. There are 0 to 4 SIC codes, usually 1, selected by companies when they register. They're allowed to update their SIC codes whenever they like. They almost never do. And that means that SIC codes are frequently wrong, vague, and insufficient. We saw that with the Veolia example. And the SIC code system itself was last updated in 2007, so it's unable to capture the emerging economy. I can give you a perfect example of that here. On the right-hand side, we see the UK government's website for helping you select the SIC code for your company when you register it. I've typed artificial intelligence into the SIC code list, and it says no records were found. So the SIC code system, last updated in 2007, is able to classify companies into 4 different types of rubber manufacturer. It has 1 classification that deals with data. So all of the companies in the economy that deal with data, just 1 classification in the SIC code system. And it has no artificial intelligence content, and it has no content in the vast majority of the emerging economy. So the SIC code system just can't work for lots of the emerging economy. That's why we built RSICs. And I'll give you an example of how RSICs work nicely. This is our company, the Data City. We are listed as information technology consultancy activities. I suppose we sort of do that. We're also listed as our SIC codes as other information technology service activities. I mean, it's not wrong, but it's not very useful. And our RSICs are data infrastructure. We provide data infrastructure services. That's what this call is about, is the infrastructure such as RSICs and RTICs that can help you power your services. We do the geospatial economy, data processing and visualization. Any of you who've used our platform will be able to see that we process all 5 million active companies in the UK and 4 million that are no longer active. We create maps, graphs, charts, tables, huge amounts of data. And we are an artificial intelligence company, but we are an enabling platform. That is, we help you to do things rather than do it ourselves. So RTICs are brilliant. The RTIC system has 11 types of artificial intelligence compared to 0 in the SIC system. There are currently 3,188 UK companies classified as AI, but that changes every month. And in total, we have over 400 RTICs covering 210,000 companies in the emerging economy. Those numbers are probably from a couple of weeks ago, so it will have probably gone up since then. And I can show you how the RTIC system works. We select training sets, positive, negative. We can show you exactly how we come to our answer. And we can do really interesting things with the RTIC system, such as recently we've done this work that was featured in the FT, looking at areas of the emerging economy in the UK and where was good at them. But I don't want to talk too much about RTICs. I've shown you them. This is the biggest bit of feedback that we get when we talk about RSICs. People say, wow, the RSICs are amazing, love them, but you've only got 210,000 companies in them, and there's 5 million companies in the UK. People will say to us, much of the economy is established, not emerging, and we need to cover the whole economy. People say, our systems run on SIC codes. We need a drop-in replacement, but with all the SIC codes fixed. And we completely understand that. And that's why we have developed the real SIC system, R6. It is a drop-in replacement for SIC codes. As I showed you with the Veolia example, every RSIC is exactly the same as a SIC code. We are just assigning SIC codes properly. We have 100% coverage when combined with SIC codes. So if the SIC code is correct, we're not going to fix it. We can check that the SIC code is correct. And if we can't assign an RSIC, we can always use the SIC code. So R6 are SIC codes, they're just fixed. So we come back to the SIC code system with the example of Veolia. SIC codes can be wrong, they can be vague, they can be insufficient, and they are always static. They're very, very rarely updated. And our new system with Veolia is correct. I showed you that we got Veolia correct as doing collection of waste, recycling, landfill maintenance. They are precise. They're much, much more precise than you're likely to get with SIC codes. They are comprehensive. In the case of Veolia, we've returned 4 R6s. Sometimes we'll only return 1, 2, or 3. It depends how much the company does. But for a big company like Veolia, you're likely to get 4 R6s. And they're real time. We're updating our R6 monthly. When a company changes what it does, we can change what we tell you it does. We have every company in the UK, and we are fully compatible with SIC codes. I'm going to give some examples because I like examples. So these are 2 churches in a village which I've never been to called Amt Hill. The top church is an example. It's called Amt Hill Baptist Church. And it does clearly say from its website and its description that it is a church, but it doesn't have an SIC code. So there are a certain subset of UK organisations that don't need to give themselves an SIC code, and some churches, especially older churches, are one such example. So the SIC code tells us nothing about what they do. Our top RSIC for Amt Hill Baptist Church is 94.910 activities of religious organisations. They also do other service activities. Churches do services generally, yes. They do other social work activities without accommodation, so you can't sleep in the church, but they will help to look after you, and they do book publishing, which sounds almost perfect for a church. The second church was St Andrew's Amt Hill Limited. That has SIC codes of 41100 and 41202. That's development of building projects and construction of domestic buildings. Those are both just completely wrong. And we see that with a surprisingly high number of companies and organisations in the UK. It's quite a boring task registering a company. There is a big form to fill in. Top of your mind is probably not getting your SIC codes correct, and you are unlikely to come back and fix them. So we can fix them for you. Again, the top RSIC is activities of religious organisations. So RSICs fill gaps and they fix errors. Those are 2 examples. The University of Leeds is another example, doesn't have a SIC code. Its top R6 are educational support services, other education, first degree level higher education, postgraduate level higher education. It's a perfect match with our R6 to give you the SIC codes that the University of Leeds, as a Royal Charter organisation, never had to provide. Play Overseas is another nice company that we've been using in our testing. The description from the Play Overseas website, which we have, says what they do. Play Overseas help to identify postgraduate athletic scholarship opportunities that allow graduates the chance to continue their student athlete careers. And the SIC code that they've chosen for themselves to represent that phrase is 96090, other service activities not elsewhere classified. We don't think that's very useful. So we assign them 4 R6, which are other sports activities, educational support, sports and recreation, and other education, which is clearly what they do. The last one that I'll give as an example is this restaurant in Barnet, sorry. They claim to be Barnet's favorite Iranian restaurant, and their SIC code is growing of rice. I don't think that they grow rice. Barnet is not a brilliant place to grow rice, but nevertheless, they have selected that as their SIC code. And there are, I want to say, 40 companies in the UK that claim to grow rice, but it might be even more than that. There's a lot of companies in the UK that claim to grow rice, grow tropical fruit, grow oranges. None of them do. They've just selected that SIC code incorrectly when they registered and never updated it. We can tell you that the top RSIC for Charterbass Restaurant is a licensed restaurant. We can also tell you that they do event catering and that they do takeaway food shopping. So those are some examples. And then this is a broad look at just how big the problem is that we are fixing. So all UK companies, almost all UK companies, have a SIC code. They are split into 731 SIC codes that group into 21 sections. So the A, B, C, D, they are primary production, mining, fisheries, manufacturing. And as you get over to the right-hand side, you get closer to health, education, general services. And in the lower graph here, what I've done is I've just grayed out all of the SIC codes that are other SIC codes. SIC codes like activities of other holding companies not elsewhere classified, activities of head offices, other business support services, other service activities not elsewhere classified. And what we see is that 42% of employees in the private sector in Britain are working for a company which has an other SIC code. We just don't know what they do. There's some sort of other business services or activities of head office. And our RSIC system is able to assign 77% of those employees to a company with a useful RSIC. We fill in the majority of the problem that we have. The remaining small grey area is for companies that we haven't been able to find a website for and possibly don't have a website, so we can't fill them in. But our coverage with the RSIC system is exceptionally high. You can get an RSIC for almost everyone employed in the UK. So in summary, RSICs have 100% coverage when you combine them with SIC codes. They are a 100% compatible with SIC codes solution. They are a drop-in replacement. You don't have to rebuild any internal systems. You can keep reporting using your SIC code systems. They instantly classify new companies. So you give us a website, we'll tell you the RSICs. And of the 42% of UK private sector employees working at a company with an other SIC code, we assign 77% to a useful SIC code with an RSIC. That number actually has gone up slightly since I wrote these slides, but this shows you how quickly we can improve and build on the RSIC system. And the error rate of assignments is under 0.1%. It's very hard for us to measure. We so rarely get the RSICs wrong that we don't really know the error rate yet. We have found one or two now in our early work with people, but we've already been able to fix them. So it's been a really big success for us with this system. So I'll leave with this slide. The Data City is a platform which has huge amounts of company data, finances, employees, growth, job postings, grants, funding rounds, innovation, locations, keywords, clustering, more and more and more. And we offer you 3 ways to try and understand what a company does. The SIC code system, which we have in our platform, that's the established system. The RTIC system, which classifies the emerging economy, things like AI. And now we have the RSIC system, which are just SIC codes, but fixed. So I hope that's useful, and I'll pass back to Alex.
Thank you very much, Tom. So there is a Q&A open. So if anyone's got any questions, please do post your comments in. So far we have one comment from Ben Williamson, which I very much enjoyed. That is dope. Feel free to just heap compliments on us. We're open to that. But if you've got any actual questions, do post them. I'm just going to share my screen quickly, and I'm going to just show you what this looks like in the platform with a specific example around how it can change the understanding of economic sectors of a place. I will try that again. I need to authorize something. Okay. That look right. Yeah. Okay. So here I've selected local authority of Leeds. Every company that has a registered address here or a trading address in it, so it's more than the count of registered addresses in the geography. Then in our analyze section, you can see those businesses summarized, and we've got a lot of data on companies here, which I won't take you through sort of all of it. I'll just jump down to the sector view, but you can see here we've got stuff like investment data, GVA estimates, turnover, growth rates, import export data, distribution of the companies based in Leeds and their other geographies. We've got a lot of stuff around the actual nature of a company in terms of how many people it employs, the gender of directors, its own trajectory, jobs and skills requirements of businesses. If I look at the sector view of Leeds, and we have SIC code selected here, you can see 82990 other business support service activities is at position 4. If we revisit the industrial base of Leeds through the lens of R6, you can see that this changes a lot. 82990 isn't even, it's not even in the top. It's down here somewhere. Top 10 sectors, and that's the chart that Tom was presenting, actually visualized here in terms of counts for a geography. We've split all the companies that are in the others out into more useful, at the very least others, but useful sector classifications, which means you can actually get a much better picture of what the industrial base of a place is doing. And then you can cut that by any other of our metrics that you're looking for. So you can look at, investability, gender dynamics, growth rates, look at the large companies, look at the SMEs, look at the recently formed companies, and get just a much better view of your traditional economy, and obviously through our artics, the frontier economy. Cool. So I'll maybe pause there, and we can stop sharing our screen. Jump back to the Q&A.
Yeah, I can jump straight in because I've already answered 2 questions, Alex. So I best answer them for everyone as well here. So Paddy Vanderpan asks, are you engaging with the ONS? And the answer to that is yes, because the reason that the slides that I shared were quite professional looking was because I presented this to the ONS at Old Trafford last week. So there's a huge amount of interest in this in the ONS. The ONS have done some work to try and do this themselves. There's some really good blog posts out from the data science campus at the ONS where they've tried to do this. Our method is a lot better than what the ONS were able to achieve, but we were able to make really good use of the ONS's quality assessment platform. So they set up a system whereby they could check the quality of the methods that they were using. And reusing that was really helpful for us in understanding how good our system was. And then the second question is from Peter Biesenaar. When extracting the data, will the most relevant R6 be the first presented? Which is a question that we've already had, is really important. So at the moment, yes, the top RSIC is the most relevant. And we are working on displaying this more clearly. Behind the scenes, we have a score for the R6. We don't display R6 when they are not relevant at all. And we put the most relevant R6 at the top of the list. But we are going to be working on making sure that users can see and understand which R6 are probably the best ones to use, and helping them say, for some companies, we've already made big improvements where for some companies we'll only show 1 or 2 R6, especially if they're quite a narrow and focused company.
Thank you. Okay, there's a few more here. So there's a Maria has asked, are ticks over time flagged in the platform? So yes, there is time series data on RTICs. So you can see the number of companies incorporated joining an RTIC, and I'm assuming you mean RTIC, not RSIC in this context. There is also the ability potentially to look at, I'm not sure you may have considered it, Tom, but I guess the time series aspect of R6 is different because it's just based on incorporation and when they launch the website, right? It's not so much a sort of changing activity. If a company changes its activities over time, we will pick up that and we will change the RSIC of a business at a point in time in the same way as an RTIC. And then presenting that. It's not something we've sort of done yet, but we do get asked.
Yeah, I've just answered the, what is it? Maria Gracia Guijon. Let's hope my Spanish is holding up. So yes, we have historical websites for most companies in the Data City, and we assign both R6 and R6 to those historical websites. My answer is this isn't live in the UI yet. It's very close, but we're trying to figure out how we deal with noise over time. A company that looks like it starts doing something in AI or otherwise. We're just trying to figure out how we show that to the user in a safe way. But the work is done and it works.
Cool. For those of you asking where you can see this in the platform, this is a paid for upgrade, I'm afraid. If you'd like to reach out to Emma Forber or myself, we'll talk to you about pricing for that based on your current usage licensing levels. Nadine McLennan asked about companies are invested in ESG net zero via their accounts. So not via their accounts at the moment, but we are scraping ESG statements. So if you can filter by ESG statement, and you'll get a list of URLs from their website, which we believe link to statements about their ESG commitments. There's obviously a lot of interest in this area. It's possible we may look at accounts, but it's not in the near future. How do you deal with the portioning of turnover, employment, etc., double counting when using R6? So it's handled because ultimately the count of classifications is not a duplication of the count of companies. So whenever in Analyze you're viewing summary statistics of whatever view of company, so a place, the count of classifications will be greater than the count of companies. The turnover and headcount is taken from the count of companies, not the count of classifications. So there is no duplication as such. Duncan McGunn, local GVA is interesting. Yeah, so we actually got an economist to work with us on this. It's mainly based, I mean, Tom, you can probably give a better answer than me on this one. GVA?
Yes. GVA, local GVA is interesting. So can I talk through the estimation methodology? I can. The dream is what you write, Duncan. So the dream is that we would assign GVA to a company by getting the data on its total wages paid, the total profit that it makes, and the rent that it pays, and a few other little things that might be in its company accounts. And we can then estimate each company's GVA and then sum up company GVAs for all of those companies. That doesn't work. And the reason why it doesn't work is that the number of employees and the wage totals and the profit calculations and the rent rarely align particularly well within a single set of company accounts at the moment. We'd like to be able to do that, but generally you're getting compensation that doesn't necessarily align with the time in which the rent was paid, and that doesn't necessarily align with the time when the profits are paid. Accounting is a beautiful art, and what companies say is profit is not necessarily the same profit as we want to be using for GVA answers. So the way that we estimate GVA instead is we calculate the average GVA per employee per sector, and that's reasonably easy to calculate because the ONS report official statistics on total GVA and total number of employees per sector. So we know the GVA per employee in each sector of the economy, and then we assign a GVA to each company based on the number of employees that it has. So I hope that answers the question. It is we assign GVA to companies based on the number of employees they have, the sector they're in, and the average GVA per employee in that sector.
Thank you. James Moore, how does this work with sole traders and partnership businesses? We currently only work with entities registered at Companies House. So that does not include sole traders. Partnerships are registered at Companies House, so they should be covered, unless there's a business classification I'm not aware of. Paddy, we do work with experts, but the RSIC methodology is different from the RTIC methodology. There is a built-in correction quality assurance process, which is why Tom was so confident about the very, very low error rates. That methodology is something that we're hoping to apply to our TICs, or some version of it. So watch this space. There's going to be some really big advances in our ability, the speed at which we can create classifications, the accuracy with which we can create classifications, and then increasingly how classifications can work, not just in the UK, but internationally. Mm-hmm.
It's worth saying on that the RSIC system produces really high quality outputs with very, very low error rates. And it's tempting to say, oh, well, why don't you just do the same for RTICs? Unfortunately, RTICs are classifying something that no one else has ever classified ever before. We are the first to classify the companies that we classify into our RTICs. So we have no gold standard and we have no to measure against. So that's why it requires, as Paddy says, lots of expert review, quite a lot of work, lots of rounds of training, sense checking, etc. With RSICs, we are classifying companies into things, SIC codes, which have existed and been manually verified for a long time. So that's why we're able to have such a high confidence in the results.
Nadine, many companies are greenwashing. Yes. Yes, if you look at BP's website, you'd think it was the most environmentally contributing company in the world. It's hard for us to make a statement about that beyond what they say on their website. Ultimately, we're using their website text to classify them. What is happening is regulatory clampdown on greenwashing. So companies over a certain size, I think it's 50 million or 250 employees, I can't remember the cutoff, have to make statements and are going to be held to account. There are lawsuits going through from people like Advertising Standards and the FCA against companies who have greenwashed. So, for instance, one of the hypotheses out there on quite a large class action is that if a publicly traded company is promoting itself on the basis of its commitment to the net zero objectives, but fails to meet them, has it misled people buying and selling its shares? And if the value of those shares decreases, is it therefore liable for the losses of the people who bought those shares? So there's some stuff like that which could be, I think, very meaningful in stopping companies greenwash. There's a huge amount of legislation coming in Europe, which will, so they're regulating the net zero ratings agencies, and also in America, although we'll see what happens to that with the change of administration.
Just quickly, I've typed my own email address wrong in an answer to Duncan. I'm not Tom at thedatacic.com. I'm Tom F at thedatacic.com, TOMF at thedatacic.com. The point about GVAs is really important and really well made. The ONS's GVA estimations are based on 65,000 is actually quite a decent sized sample, but it is still just a sample. The ONS famously are having really big problems with business response rate to their surveys. They just made a huge correction to their R&D intensity data which really changed R&D intensity. We expect that if they rebalance their GVA sampling data set in a similar way, we might get quite a different picture of local GVA. I think there's a lot of work to do on improving both the ONS improving their GVA methods, but also us improving ours. There's one thing, Duncan, in terms of our GVA estimation methodology, which I think we should be doing and we don't do yet, which is that we assume that GVA and productivity is constant within a sector. And we know that that's not true. So we know that Cambridge Life Sciences have a particularly high GVA compared to life sciences in some other parts of the country. We know that financial services in the City of London have a particularly high GVA per employee. We know that oil and gas in North East Scotland has a particularly high GVA per employee. We are working on it, incorporating that, but those type of corrections are likely to change the story, I would say, a bit. I think usefully, and we do want to work on it. I don't think they change things a lot, but they definitely change things a bit. So it's something that we're constantly working on.
Yeah, I mean, the short and long of it is an estimated GVA, and the word estimated is important. We are not trying to say this is the exact GVA of any individual company or sector. It's a guide, much in the same way as the ONS own data is. You know, that they can only go so far. So we've done what we can as useful as possible. We think we're open to evolving it, but we aren't able to get confidential company financials data if they don't publish it, and that's particularly true of SMEs. There's a question from Jonathan Noble. Expanding on a previous question, can you create custom subsectors? Yes, you can, without double counting. So yeah, so if you add, if you select a lot of companies based on all of the classifications that you're interested in, going back to my first answer, you then only count the number of companies. You don't count the classifications. And in our platform, you will only ever get the total count of companies aggregated data. So you can add list after list after list. It will dedupe the companies and only present the data from each individual company as turnover and employee count, growth rates, etc. Ashok Mahey, we work at the market research section and do surveys which ask the question on business surveys on their business activity. If the classification does not match from what they say, or what they do as a business activity, and what's on the RSIC, can we amend? You can report errors, yes. However, if their website says they are a builder and on their survey they've said they are a baker, we will stick with the builder. The methodology is designed to reflect what they say they do on their website. That said, if you wanted us to classify the responses they put on their forms, we could hand you back that data as a sort of separate thing, but wouldn't be in the platform. I think we've asked. Yeah, question about GVA estimate for those emerging sectors that don't have an existing sector like artificial intelligence. The answer there is those companies have SIC codes, and we estimate their GVA based on their SIC code, unfortunately.
I've answered that. I think I said we use the SIC codes that the companies have. So in specifically, I think maybe those two questions are very similar, but this is our GVA estimates for AI companies are going to be the same as GVA estimates for the general IT sector, pretty much, because most AI companies have registered themselves with SIC codes in the general AI sector. It's very interesting to think through, actually, given that so many UK AI companies are like the components of GVA are wages, profit, rent. Most AI companies in the UK at the moment are pre-profit, which it leads you into actually having to get the book out again and trying to figure out what the GVA is of a company that raises a huge investment round and then loses a lot of money. Of course, it does have a GVA. A lot of that will be through the wages paid and the rent paid, but exactly how we do that is definitely something. It's definitely something to think of, and definitely something to get the economics textbook and the ONS guidelines back out again to think about what GVA is for the startup sector. But at the moment, our methodology is as I've described it. We assume productivity that's similar to the surrounding IT sector. We are working on some improvements for that.
I mean, even here, R6 are improvements. So if you look at DeepMind, you know, that their SIC code is other research and experimental development on natural sciences and engineering, which is sort of fair enough, I guess. Google Health is other business support service activities not elsewhere classified. So even R6 are a step in the right direction. And you go from there. Yeah, R&D expenditure would be great, but again, R&D expenditure is not open data for most companies.
Yeah, I have a long-standing dream, which is that in the UK we have a very generous R&D tax credit system, which means that the vast majority of UK companies performing R&D report the amount of R&D that they do to the Treasury and receive a very large tax rebate for that. I have argued to the Treasury quite a few times, HMRC, to say, is there any chance that in return for the generosity of your R&D tax credit scheme, you could just publish a table of every company and their R&D tax credit claim? I think quite reasonably they say that that's commercially sensitive and they're not going to do it. But that would definitely be the one of the ways into us thinking about how we improve GVA estimates, especially for very high R&D or very highly loss-making startups or early stage companies. I still wonder with a company like DeepMind exactly how we would even start to pull out their finances properly. I don't know how their finances work within Google's, well, it'll probably be Alphabet, not Google. Alphabet's parent company accounting. It doesn't seem to me that DeepMind sell a huge amount of stuff directly at the moment. They merely do amazing R&D that is then used to create fantastic sellable products for a different part of Alphabet. If anybody is an amazing accountant who can do international forensic accounting, then yeah, let me know.
Oh, okay. So I think the questions have stopped now. So this is your sort of last chance to ask a question. Otherwise, I think we'll wrap up. As I mentioned previously, this is an upgrade. So if you're interested in pricing, please do get in touch. It's new. So we've got some guide pricing, but we're up for conversations. We're also, I'll just mention previous webinars. If you want to check out our website and YouTube channel, you can also see our work on clusters. So there's a lot of work going on with our cluster exploration tool. If that's of interest, please do get in touch as well. We're just working on a cohort of sort of alpha clients, putting that into the platform. Again, that's a pay for upgrade, but particularly relevant to those of you working on growth strategy and industrial strategy. High potential clusters being a key focus of the green paper that was out. Yeah, and apart from that, thank you very much, everyone.
Just quickly, Alex, have we missed out Ashok Mahay's question here? So I think he's saying, we work in the market research sector and we do surveys which ask the question on business surveys on their business activities. If the classifications do not match what they say, what they do is a business activity from what's in the RSIC, can we amend? You definitely can amend, but we would also really like to amend it. So if you do happen to be using RSICs and you find some that are wrong, please let us know. I'm very confident that within a few weeks we'll have fixed it, so you won't have to amend it. We would really like to know when a company's RSIC doesn't match what they do. So far, we find very few examples of it, but the ones that we have found have already led to us improving our methodology a lot. So that would be really useful.
Cool. Okay, right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks all.